says that America overreacted to the events of that day and overestimated the strength of the enemy. Zakaria writes, quote, 9 years after 9/11, can anyone doubt that al-Qaeda is simply not that deadly a threat? Since that gruesome day in 2001, Osama bin Laden's terror network has been unable to launch a single major attack on high-value targets in the United States and Europe. September 11th was a shock to the American psyche and the American system. As a result, we overreacted, end quote. Wall Street Journal foreign affairs columnist Bret Stephens and editorial board member Matt Kaminsky join us to talk about this. Bret, overreaction?
Well, that's probably not what people were saying right after the nearly successful Christmas Day bombing over Detroit last year. It's not what people were saying when a car bomb nearly or went off in Times Square. Certainly not what people were saying after Madrid or the bombings in London. So partly this is, I think, this kind of commentary is a reaction to a certain lull, but that lull is a reflection of the success that we've had in killing Al-Qaeda leaders, in reducing some of their capabilities. I think the threat nonetheless remains. It's shifting. It's shifting in terms of who's trying to attack us. It's shifting geographically, moving from Pakistan to Yemen, but it remains very present. And so to treat it as somehow, to suggest we overreacted, seems to me to miss the point of the last 9 years.
So, Matt, compliment to the Bush policies, and to be fair, President Obama's policies, since he's really followed Bush in many respects.
Absolutely. Actually, as a tribute, not witting, of course, to what's happened over the last 9 years. We could not have anyone say that we've overreacted if any of these events had happened. But because not a single American has been killed on American soil by terrorists since 9/11, and because the Bush policies have worked, we are able to have a confident and open debate about this right now. I think the real danger is actually, if you want to see an overreaction, see what happens if a nuclear bomb goes off somewhere in an American city, or if a plane does go down.
And that's ultimately the threat, even if it is not imminent, which we don't think it is. But if that ever happened, that's the kind of thing that would have devastating impact for civil liberties. The American public would recoil in horror and probably demand real, potentially America-changing policy.
Well, I think it's absolutely frightening to contemplate what would happen if there were another really major terrorist attack in this country, a nuclear explosion. You could see internment camps for Muslims in America the way you had for Japanese. And it's one reason why you have to continue to pursue aggressive counterterrorism policies abroad to prevent that kind of scenario and also to prevent that kind of reaction. You know, Israelis have this metaphor when dealing with terrorists. They say you have to mow the lawn, which means that the grass is always going to come up, but you have to make sure, you know, you have to keep it down. And that's what the United States has really been doing for the past 9 years. It's been doing it in the Northwest Frontier Province. It's now attempting to do it in Yemen, in Iraq, and elsewhere. We now have homegrown threats. And if we move to a posture of complacency, we are going to find the weeds coming up. We are going to find ourselves.
But I guess the response to that would be, you know, you're positing a false dilemma. On the one hand, complacency. On the other hand, overreaction. Is there a more moderate middle that we could pursue here?
Well, it would be very difficult to find it. I mean, where exactly is the moderate middle? The fact is, as Matt pointed out, that for 9 years, not a single American has died on American soil because we've been pursuing aggressive counterterrorism policies. How much do you want to reel that in, really, and see where the dividing line is?
Matt, one thing where I think maybe we have overreacted is in the bureaucratic reshuffling and expansion. I mean, the intelligence reform of 2005, all it did was put another layer of bureaucracy over the 15 intelligence or so agencies that we have. The Department of Homeland Security is not a model of streamlined activity.
No, certainly not. Actually, it's a very fair critique, and it's a critique that certainly conservatives should make, that this has been led to this sort of growth of this uber bureaucracy. We're building some gigantic complex outside of Washington to house the Department of Homeland Security. But the real logical fallacy which is made here is that when people say, Al-Qaeda is now weak, therefore we overreacted. Well, perhaps Al-Qaeda is now weak because of the way we reacted.
And that's why we have to stay on offense, which, intriguingly, once you get into office the way the Obama team has, they become as concerned about these terror threats as the previous guys. Maybe even as much as Dick Cheney, do you think? Well, maybe not that much. All right. We have to take one more break.